Good morning, Marcel. Good morning, Debbie. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'm Councillor Paula Fletcher, and I chair TCHC's Community Safety Advisory Committee, and here we are in the public session. Welcome, everybody. Let me just begin by acknowledging that the land we're on is, holding this in-person and virtual meeting is the traditional territory of many nations, the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. It's now home to many First Nations people, Inuit and Métis. We also acknowledge Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We also acknowledge all treaty people, including those who came here as settlers, as migrants, either in this generation or generations past, and those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly those brought to these lands as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. And we pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent. Today's public session, one report, the Q3 2024 Violence Reduction Program update is being brought forward to this committee for its information. There are no deputations today. I'm wondering if anybody wants to declare a conflict of interest. No? Hearing none, thank you very much. No conflicts were declared on this agenda. There's just one item on the public agenda. And are we having a presentation, or is that just for questions? Shall we maintain that here for questions and comments?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So we have the couple of things on our agenda to approve. We have to approve our agenda, which is just one business item, that's item number 6, which we'll hold. We need to confirm the minutes of the meeting of September 20th, 2024. Who would like to do that?
I'll move.
You'll move that? Thank you very much. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And then there is the business arising from the public meeting minutes. Is there any conversation on that? Any business arising, which is to coming in, it's in camera. It's just the incidents, gun violence incidents, that'll be held in camera. So could you just move receive that business arising, please? Marcel, moved. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And now that brings us to item number 6, which is the Q3 2024 Violence Reduction Program update. And I'm in your hands. Do you just want to start with questions, or how would you like to proceed, members?
For me, I just had one question, and it's probably, it's Debbie speaking, and it's probably...
Sorry, Debbie, it's hard to hear in this room. Would you just get a little closer, please, to the mic there? Thank you.
I was saying that I'm probably feeling an urgency given the notices we've been receiving about violence in some of our communities. I was wondering why the decrease in community safety patrols between Q1 and Q3 of this year, but also the significant decrease year over year.
Where is that?
It's on page 11, page 5 of 8 or page 11. Community safety patrols.
See that, thank you. Who'd like to answer that? Al?
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Community Safety Advisory Committee. It's a pleasure to be here today. In regards to the question, Director Douglas, CSU is going through a turnover period. Our attrition is reduced significantly from years past, but we are down a few people. But one of the issues we're working through is the new legislation. There's some challenges we're facing with that, has kind of held off some of our staff, new staff, from becoming as productive as they can in the field. And we're working through those challenges with the ministry and with Toronto Police and with our own legal department. But because of the reduction in numbers, our frontline call for service is the priority for response right now. And unfortunately, it comes sometimes at the reduction of directed patrols.
Yeah. Will you remind us what legislation you're referring to that's having an impact here?
Yes, Director Douglas, that's, through the chair, that's the Community Safety and Policing Act, the new act that came in 2019. However, it did not become into effect until the April of this year. And under there's some challenges that of us swearing in special constables. Again, it's not just Toronto Community Housing that's going through this issue. It's all special constable agencies, and we're working through it. And I think we're very close to a resolution in the matter. However, it has taken some time.
Okay. My concern is that we see patrols as preventative, and so I understand why you're putting the energies into responding to urgent calls, but we need to find a balance. But I understand the pressures that you're under. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Marcel, have you got any questions?
I got a few of them, and they're for Al. One, what's the complement of CSU right now?
Yes, Director Charlebois, through the chair, CSU is authorized for 153 special constables with the issues that I mentioned earlier. We have approximately 127. However, some of those special constables are not sworn due to the issues that I mentioned earlier. So they're performing duties. However, they're not performing frontline special constable duties that have greatly contributed to the reduction in some of the activities.
Thank you. And then I got a couple more, so I'm really sorry about this, but how many cars do you have out in the field?
Yes, through the chair, we have about 72 or 73 cars, I believe, off the top of my head. However, they're not all out in the field at one time, but because at any given time we have 17 or 16 zones, I believe, that we staff on a regular basis, plus the violence reduction staff. So at any given, and supervisors. So at any given time, we have approximately 30 cars in the field. However, it could be higher during day shift when our community safety advisors are working, but it's in the 70s.
Okay, I have two more questions. Sorry. Now, when the cars go out, how many, like, is it just one person per car?
Yes, through the chair, Director Charlebois, we have one person in our zone cars. With the exception of that would be when somebody's in training and they're teaching a newer special constable in training, and then we'll have two people physically in the car, but one sworn special constable at that time and one in training. In regards to our violence reduction staff, they traditionally travel in pairs. In one car, we'll have two people. At this point, that is the deployment model, is single person special constables in vehicles, with the exception of VRP.
Okay, two more questions. So I do understand that when a car is called out to deal with an incident or a community issue, sometimes you have to double up. So you have like two cars and a supervisor, depending on the seriousness of the issue, right? And on an estimate, how long are those cars off the road?
Through the chair, Director Charlebois, it would depend on the type of issue they're addressing. Sometimes a more violent incident will require our people to do download video, so they'll be tied up for a little longer. Something like a noise dispute, where again we don't have the bylaw authority to enforce the noise bylaw. However, we do have a role to play in the process. So our people on that matter would probably be off the road for approximately half hour. However, in the longer cases, it could be up to even up to a full shift if the matter was so required that attention.
Okay. And so you have 100. You're okayed for 153 constables. Right now you have 127, right? What would be like ideally a full complement of CSU in the field?
Through the chair, Director Charlotte, well, it's a little difficult to give an exact number at this point. Again, working with the CSU review team, a lot will depend on the deployment model. We, as a group, work with the CSU review team to come out with. Right now, under the staffing model that we're deploying, the 153, when fully staffed, would meet the needs of our deployment model. However, again, with additional people, we would be able to enhance our directed patrols and other proactive measures.
Thanks, Al. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Uba. Welcome. I'm going to go, Debbie, you have Marcel, your hand's still up. Do you want to keep going or no? Taking it down? Thank you.
Good morning, Paula. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning,
Good
Ulla.
morning. Debbie,
Yeah, just two other questions. I'm not sure who this question is for. I noticed that we seem to be having some challenges recruiting community service organizations to support. I'm not sure if I read this in the public documents or in the private documents, so forgive me.
let's just check let's check if that's a public question or not, if you don't mind.
I noticed
Nadia?
that one organization, I think it's in the Jane Street area, who did a walkabout that we were hoping that they would come on as a service provider, CAFCAN, and the decision was made not to move forward. Are staff able to speak to why that decision was made?
Is that a public question or a private question? Just checking here. That's an in-camera question, Debbie. You have to ask it later.
Okay. I'll leave it there.
Do you have another one?
Do we know what the timing is? And I'm sorry I missed the last meeting, but when are we expecting the CSU review? Recommendations and findings?
It's very late. Who would
Yes.
like to answer that? Yes.
So through the chair, yes, so we've been in contact with the city and the organization that's doing the work on the CSU review. At this point, they're targeting our February stream of board meetings to bring forward that report.
Okay, please make the meeting after February 6th. I would like to be here, but I'm out of the country until that time. If I may impose that on staff.
Sorry, Debbie, when are you out of the country?
I'm returning on February 7th.
When are you leaving?
On January 21st.
Okay, because obviously some people have been involved in that. I'm sure there will be other conversations before it goes forward formally, so.
I'm sure
I hope so.
I'm sure we can accommodate everybody with briefings and reminder that we asked to have that review, perhaps to have a big review. So that's underway, so I don't think any decisions of any kind will get made while that's underway.
Yeah,
Did you have any?
I just wanted to remind us that, this committee was set up because of the CSU review, so I don't want to lose track of that.
Yes, very disappointing that it's not here at this point. I agree. Uba, do you have any questions? No? No? Okay. I just have a couple, starting on, I just want to know if these are the VRP communities, correct? Yes. And at one point, the VRP communities didn't always match up with the categories. And are the CSU only in the VRP communities, or are they also in other category communities that deserve attention?
So through the chair, thank you for the question. CSU provides services in all of our communities. They have a concentrated effort in violence reduction program communities. What we've done over the last year is provide additional support in some of our communities that are experiencing gun violence, increased gun violence, whether they're VRP sites or not. And so through the CSU review, we're hoping to get clarity in terms of how we continue to move forward with the concentrated CSU model so that we're ensuring that we're deploying resources where they're most needed.
So then I just want to go to page 9. What's the Violence Prevention Toronto Conference, please? Mentioned in paragraph 2.
Through the chair, it's a conference that Violence Prevention Toronto puts on, and we participated. So the Programs and Partnerships team heavily participated in the planning and implementation of the conference. More than 600 attendees took part in that workshop, in workshops, lectures, work planning sessions, etc., at Centennial College, and hundreds also joined online. And now we're in the process of implementing some of those action items from this year's conference and planning for the 2025 conference.
And who attended? Were there tenants there or staff? Who was there?
Through the chair, I'm going to pass it on to Alex to give a little bit more details, but it did include service providers from across the city, both city staff, TCHC staff, and many other agency partner staff.
Good morning. Thank you, Arsama. Through the chair, primarily it was frontline staff and management staff of Violence Prevention Toronto, along with community service delivery partners. I don't believe there were TCHC tenants directly invited. However, there were a number of community members. I can't verify whether or not community members were TCHC tenants. I was actually away that week, so I wasn't at the conference myself.
Just remind me, Violence Prevention Toronto is what?
So it's coming out of SafeTO. It's the
it's a
centralized
city.
office to prevent violence in Toronto.
It's a city-led, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Then I'll just go to page 10. I'm quite interested in how those tenancy managements were determined. That's paragraph. These are CSU, apparently. So who's doing this? A regional approach, I'm unclear. Critical instance responses, instructing TCHC legal division services to issue an N5 notice to terminate a tenancy where appropriate. Who was instructing TCHC legal services?
So through the chair, the work around tenancy management is managed through our regional teams, and the instructing client is our general manager in terms of issuing these notices. So they work with their local tenant service coordinators as well as the legal team to ensure that we're following tenancy management processes.
I'd like to be really clear on that because I think earlier it was CSU directed, so that's internal general manager. Going to page,
Paula,
yes,
before you continue with the next question, can I go follow up on that question?
yes, please.
I forgot I wanted to ask about this as well. Do we have a working definition of what we mean by antisocial behavior?
So through the chair, we do. I can't read it verbatim off the top of my head, but we do have as well a working group made up of the regional staff. So when there is an escalation related to antisocial behavior, there is an adjudication group that looks at the individual cases to ensure that we're being consistent across the regions. We also try to work with the tenancy where possible to try and mitigate any circumstances, but in areas or tenancies where we do need to escalate, it goes through that eviction committee, antisocial eviction committee, which is made up of legal staff, regional staff, as well as if we need to bring in any additional internal TCHC staff. And that committee actually looks at each case individually and then makes the determination to proceed with an eviction notice.
Okay, so I'm assuming, Nadia, that the mitigating circumstances includes warnings to the tenants?
Absolutely. It goes anywhere from direct intervention, sending in social service support staff, working with third-party agencies. In extreme cases, we do seek evictions, and we're continuing to look at whether we're doing that consistently and as often as we should. And so moving into 2025, we're looking at whether we should be a little bit more intentional about moving out tenancies sooner in the process. So that is something we're looking at.
And are we seeing the majority of N5s issued in communities 3 and 4 and the VPRN, VRPN? I don't know what that's for.
I would say it's across our portfolio. We do have problematic tenancies in many of our buildings. There are certain circumstances related to gun violence, for example, where you may see a concentration in some of our communities that have a higher risk of gun violence, but I would say it's portfolio-wide.
Thanks.
Anybody else on that one? Uba.
I just have a quick question related to the question just that was discussed. And when we evicting a client per se, if they have mental health challenge, do we connect them to mental health services? And if it comes to putting that tenant into other providers that is more suitable, do we do transfer instead eviction?
So through the chair, absolutely. We try to engage with the tenancy throughout the duration of the tenancy, both during an eviction process, before an eviction process. We do have our access and support community service coordinators that actually work and engage at a case level, at a unit level, to actually support the tenancy. In extreme cases where eviction is the outcome, we do provide what we call, quote unquote, a soft landing, which allows us to identify a third-party organization or support system to actually move the tenancy to. I would say we probably focus a little bit heavily on the support side, and we need to think a little bit more on the enjoyment side for the other tenants, and so that's an area that we're exploring, but 100% we provide lots of support at an individual tenant level as well as to the building as a whole.
Thank you, because there might be some tenants who are more suitable, like supportive housing instead of regular housing, where they will get, people to administer their medications, that extra support. That's where my question was going. Thank you very much.
And one last question on this. And the year-over-year increase, Nadia, as well as the quarter after quarter increase, is due to what?
So through the chair, it's a fairly nominal increase. It's sort of like 4 or 5. Sometimes it goes down. So I would say it's based on individual circumstances versus a trend line. But given our renewed focus on supporting tenancies, healthy tenancies, I do anticipate that we may see that number increase going into 2025 as we start to think about supporting tenants to be in the right place for the supports they require. However, I would say the increase of 4 quarter over the quarter isn't necessarily something that's statistically significant at this stage.
Okay.
Okay, I'm just going to go to page 12 and page 13 and looking at the interventions, arrests, wellness check, trespass incidents. I don't think CSU are able to arrest anybody. I don't think I don't know if just the CSU does wellness checks, but I'm not sure you can issue trespass. So just tell me who does those things, please. If you do them or the police do them.
Yes, Madam Chair, the CSU does have the ability to do all 3. CSU does have the enforcement powers as delegated through the memorandum of understanding with the Toronto Services Board and our TCHC Board of Directors. We are delegated the authorities to make arrests on our property when appropriate, of course. The wellness checks are done by a number of different areas within the organizations. The one noted on this chart is only done by CSU, and those could be our CSAs and our special constables when in buildings, and either through a call for service or information provided by site staff. They will do the wellness checks. And the trespass to properties are basically antisocial behavior, usually at the front of buildings when people are trying to get into the buildings unlawfully, and they're either stopped by security, the third-party security, and a special constable has to intervene because it proceeds either for a charge or for more action than the person just being told to leave. So all 3 of those are reportings on the activities of special constables and the CSAs within CSU.
So just to keep going, the arrests, what happens with the arrest? Taken to the local police station?
Yes, Madam Chair. If our special constables make an arrest, there's under our memorandum of understanding, they are required to call the officer in charge of the associated division with Toronto Police. They'll receive further instructions after providing a narrative as to why the person was arrested. Sometimes the person will be released on a court-ordered form. Sometimes they'll be released unconditionally, and sometimes they'll be processed back at the Toronto Police Division.
Thank you. And then for the trespass, that's actually, if somebody has a trespass order, are you enforcing the trespass orders?
Yes, Madam Chair, that is one of the ways that the trespass is enforced. Other ways is when somebody comes on the property and they refuse to leave, they won't follow direction, they will engage in a prohibited activity, and at that point they can be served a notice under the Trespass to Property Act, an offense notice. There are the rare occasions where the person is a repeat offender and they can then be arrested and processed through the Provincial Offences Court for provincial offences show cause hearing, but there are many ways that could occur.
I'm quite interested in the difference because that's somebody coming on the property, our properties, TCH properties, but then there's people who are not allowed on TCHC properties. And how many trespass orders are there against people? Do you have any idea?
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I don't off the top of my head. I can certainly look into that. We do try to keep track of those within our dispatch center so we can at least know that it's on file, but I do not know the number off the top of my head of how many have orders against them.
And what would it take to get an order against you? It takes quite a bit to get an order against you, and therefore you shouldn't be on the property. So that's a very high, demand.
Yes, Madam Chair. As far as the trespass order, that would be finding of a court, or is one of the ways that it could be either provincially, where they've been a repeat offender for numerous times, and the court will ban them. There's also the ability as the landlord to ban people for prohibited behavior under the Trespass to Property Act. But there's also criminal court orders, which are separate, but they also will ban people from the property in certain conditions.
I think most of them are going to be that we've given a trespass order. TCHC's given a trespass order. Probably somebody was a former tenant, not allowed back in the area. And I think tenants feel quite nervous when they see somebody back that has a trespass order. So understanding, would you agree, Ms. Gouveia, that that is very unsettling for tenants?
Through the chair, absolutely agree. So I think it's something that we need to look into, and I will work with our senior director to look at the stats to see if it's an increasing problem.
Yeah, of the 328, what is it? And then, just over here, what is the Canadian Centre for Safer Communities, please? Who runs that?
Yes, Madam Chair. The Canadian Centre for Safer Communities is a national organization that supports municipalities and associated organizations in implementing, scaling, and evaluating community safety and well-being plans. So we've engaged them for some training, and we're also going to be engaging them for evaluation within my side of the violence reduction program under programs and partnerships.
And the CSAs, were they always in the CSU unit? I don't think so. Were they always with CSU, or is there another type of job description? I'm interested also in the salary bands for CSU versus tenant service coordinators, if we can have that.
So through the chair, I'll tackle the first part of the question. The community safety advisors have not always historically been in the community safety unit. Previous to them going into the community safety unit, they reported up through the regional teams. So they reported up to what we are calling now the manager of community safety and support, the engagement pillar work, and then they were moved to the community safety unit a few years back.
When?
Al, do you know when they were moved? Yeah, so I would say at least 6 or 7 years ago, but we can get the exact date. I don't know it off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think that is, we should dive into that a little bit, because unless you can tell me it's in the, sorry, I seem to have a frog in my throat, that it's in the CSU review, because those jobs were shifted, right? And wellness checks. So when we're looking at the salary bands as well, that's helpful to understand the differences, if there are.
So through the chair, I know that community safety advisors are management exempt, and our community service coordinators are unionized, and so they're under slightly different salary bands, but I don't have the exact numbers and information.
But when they moved and everything else, we'll just get into that a little bit more. right? That's giving out turkeys and doing all of those things, which were never traditionally in this basket. They were somewhere else.
So I know that there has been feedback given to the consultants working on the community safety unit review around the role of the CSA, and so hopefully it will be illuminated through that process on next steps.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions on this item? Seeing none, I think, what are we moving? Receipt of this? Yes, thank you, Jared. Yes, moving receipt. Marcel, do you want to move receipt? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, can I have a motion to receive it and send it to the Tenant Services Committee? That's what I was supposed to ask. Thanks. Thanks, Marcel. You do that again. All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Is there any other business to bring up here in this part of the public session? We'll move into the in-camera. No? Okay, thank you very much. Can I have a motion, please, Uba, to adjourn the public meeting and move into closed session?
Move.
Debbie, thank you. All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thanks, everybody who's watching. Have a good day.